The World Heritage Special is presented by Panasonic, Ideas for Life. This year, Panasonic continues to care for the world around us through its collaboration with UNESCO. To celebrate this thought-provoking partnership, National Geographic Channel brings you a breathtakingly original series that tells the untold story of those who safeguard world heritage for future generations. Explore the eco-ideas behind this new perspective of preservation. The World Heritage Special is presented by Panasonic, Ideas for Life.
The very place screams over-the-top opulence. Here, kings led lavish lifestyles. And Queen Marie Antoinette got to play at being peasant in her own private milking barn. But in 1793, it all came to a bloody end. Royal heads rolled, the palace's treasures plundered. If any place embodies French history in all its gore and glory, it's here at the Palace of Versailles. Once the playground of kings and the elite of the elite, Versailles now belongs to that most common of commoners, the tourist. 7 million visit every year. That's around 3 times the population of Paris itself. Now, once more, she is filled with treasures, her buildings and gardens brought back to full magnificence. Versailles is not only at the heart of French history and a symbol of French pride, it's also one of UNESCO's iconic World Heritage Sites. To work here is a privilege, and those who do have to be absolute masters of their craft.
Versailles is the people who work here every day. A little fewer than 1,000 people who every day, each one in his own way, make Versailles what it is today.
It's the end of the summer season. Tomorrow, a spectacular will mark the occasion. A nighttime show replete with fireworks, water displays, music and dance. Thousands are expected, and behind the scenes, everyone is pulling together to make sure it's a success. Key performers in tomorrow's show are the glorious fountains, which these days require some particular TLC. Jean-Pierre Bianquin is one of the engineers devoted to keeping them running, just as they did in the King's Day.
I've never seen such an elaborate network for feeding fountains, which is 400 years old. It's hard to imagine that someone was capable of creating such a network.
This is a typical extravagance at Versailles. Running water was scarce here, so these reservoirs were built to feed the fountains. In fact, a third of the massive budget for building Versailles went into its plumbing.
We haven't changed the hydraulic system at all. Of course, a valve has been replaced here and there, but 90% of the original pipes remain.
The water flows into the park through a series of pipes, the pressure provided simply by gravity.
These 2 pipes are really important ones. They are the source of the strength and height of the fountain's jets.
L'éclat total et la hauteur des plus grands jets du parc. Sur l'ensemble du parc de Versailles, il y a entre 30...
Within the whole park of Versailles, there are 30 to 35 kilometers of piping to supply the fountains.
It's a single, vast, closed network, and it dwarfs the palace itself. The pipes split up to feed all the fountains. The water then drains from those to the Grand Canal, possibly the most glamorous collection basin in the world. It's then pumped back up to the reservoirs at the top. It's a sustainable system for recycling all the water, hardly updated since the 17th century. And it shows its age.
On rencontre actuellement deux conduites.
Here we can see two pipes that supply part of the Laton fountain, and over 90% of the piping is original, from the time of construction, about 400 years ago.
Et là, on est dans un
This is one of the rare places where you can see the original pipes in a tunnel.
The Laton fountain is about to get a complete overhaul, but it has to hold out for one more big show. It's far from certain that it can.
There are actually two little leaks. They've already been repaired. It's now broken in the same place. It's become more fragile.
There's no way to repair it in time for the show. The engineers just have to hope that the piping holds up.
Ah, ça fait du bien la lumière.
That's just the first step. Now there are the fountains themselves. Their plumbing is just as old and fragile, but it's also exposed to the elements. Sure enough, they soon hit another snag. One of the jets on a fountain has stopped working.
Ah bon? C'est-à-dire?
Tout pété là.
D'accord. C'est au niveau de quoi? De la soudure
Ouais, je sais pas ce qu'il y a là. Ouais. Il est tout pété là.
It has to go to the workshop for repairs.
Bah là, je démonte le jet.
I'm dismantling the jet. It's completely melted.
Pour moi, c'est
I think it's the frost.
The heavy lead and iron fountain jet is not exactly an off-the-shelf item.
Oui, voilà, on va aller le réparer.
Jean has to repair it by hand, with perfect skill to match that of the craftsmen 400 years ago. If he gets it wrong, the jet won't shoot straight, if at all, ruining the perfection demanded from everything at Versailles. While outdoors, the fountain engineers struggle with 17th century plumbing. Inside the palace, there's also plenty of work going on. This is the domain of the curators, highly educated historians of art. Behind the scenes, they rule the staterooms, such as the Salon de Mercure. It has been under restoration for the last 2 years. Now, the royal bed is being rebuilt. They're aiming to have it look as it did in the Sun King's day. Many rooms in the palace are named for Roman gods. Some said Louis XIV fancied himself something of a deity. Mercury was the god of tradesmen and cheats, so it's perhaps appropriate that the king played cards here.
Tandis que là, c'est la broderie en plein, avec le gros tour, ça sera presque anecdotique. La broderie par rapport au gros tour, par rapport au rideau du lit, en amont.
Pierre-Xavier Hans is the curator in charge of the restoration. He's pushing hard to get this room open, but his team is running behind.
Donc vous avez une seule journée de repos.
There's only one day a week when the different workshops can actually get into and set up in the rooms.
Du château peuvent
Every other day, there are up to 2,000 visitors passing through.
Ils passent chaque jour ici.
They have to complete the whole job within a series of increasingly chaotic Mondays, the only day the palace is closed. The bed is monumental. Its gilded headpiece, intricate, delicate.
Bon, du 19, ça fera l'affaire. Ouais. Pour un choix de jeu.
Ouais. On enlève?
On l'enlève.
Tu es prêt?
Attention Eric, fragile. Sculpture.
For the nobles, the bed was a sign of trust and intimacy with the king. The curators insist that every object adheres strictly to tradition and matches the quality of the originals. Doing everything exactly right, that's what causes delay. But Pierre-Xavier has no choice. Most of the furniture has to be recreated. Today, many furnishings are replicas, albeit spectacular ones. At the close of the 18th century, the starving French rose up against the nobility and their lavish lifestyle. The reign of terror began. They guillotined King Louis XVI, the Sun King's successor, and his wife, Marie Antoinette. The palace was empty, the contents stolen, destroyed, or sold off. For the last 2 years, Pierre Xavier has had the finest craftsmen he can find, recreating the original furniture. They tinker away in a separate workshop, just as they did in the 17th century. Everything's but also craft move on, or else it would look. Dare is creating 11 folding stools to match a single original.
Voilà, et puis vous avez le, si on peut dire, le ployant de référence, le ployant authentique avec les fleurs de lys. Oui. Si important pour nous. D'accord, très bien, très bien.
They're lucky. In many cases, not a single original survives.
Et en fait, ce ployant-là est considéré comme tellement rare, c'est-à-dire qu'il est présenté avec une garniture, un carreau dessus, mais les bois dorés complètement visibles. Regardez les feuilles d'acanthe.
Pierre Xavier is definitely a details man, but that's what this job needs. When your palace is a national treasure, then you just have to get the details right. And a stool that made it through the revolution unscathed is like gold dust.
En fait, le ployant et le...
I'd say the folding stool is the ultimate piece of furniture in Versailles. We see this stool as a survivor, and it's very, very, very precious to us.
Très précieux.
We try to get as close as possible to the old techniques.
Eric has to work out exactly how the craftsmen of old made this stool, then replicate it down to the finest detail.
My job is to carve the 2 feet knowing that they should be slightly different. The original carving is slightly different, and the new work has to be done in the same spirit.
This is just step 1. When the chair legs leave the carver, they go into the workshop of Laurent Hissier, who will turn them into gilded masterpieces fit for the Sun King himself. The completion of the salon is in the hands of these craftsmen. If they don't finish on time, the curators will have no choice. Their opening will be delayed. Louis XIV made gold the iconic color of Versailles. It reflected his glory and showed off his wealth. It's the job of Laurent, the house gilder, to turn the stools for the Salon de Mercure into golden marbles. It's an elaborate process. Each takes weeks to complete. It starts with a primer called size, a kind of animal glue.
You need lots of layers. For example, if I apply only 2 layers of size, it wouldn't have enough thickness for carving and repairs. We have to put on 9, 10, 11 or 12 layers. In the 17th century, they applied 12.
It's then set aside to dry. The curators may set the deadline for these stools to be made ready, so that the salon can open before the year's big crowds are gone. But Laurent won't be hurried.
You don't become a gilder overnight. You have to put in lots of work, lots of care and attention, and patience. And you're learning your whole life.
Yellow base goes beneath the gold. If any flakes off, it won't be so obvious. Then, it's finally time for the gold itself. Gold leaf, so thin it's measured in microns. A tiny nugget is hammered into these delicate sheets, 8 centimeters square. The sheets have to be handled with care. The slightest breeze, and the gold leaf will be gone. Laurent runs the brush across his cheek to pick up a little grease, and the gold sticks at once. Then he works it into place. The expense of this really adds up over a chair. So it's important not to waste any.
What's wonderful about this trade is that we keep up the tradition. We still work in the same way as they did in the 18th century because the skills have been passed down to us. That's really important.
Monsieur Issier? Bonjour monsieur. Vous imaginez ce qui m'amène? Bonjour monsieur. Vous allez bien? Bon, c'est formidable. Formidable, formidable, parce que vous allez montrer les différentes étapes. Ouais, voilà. C'est très très bien, ça c'est parlant. Hein.
Donc la première est apprêtée de 9 couches et pas encore travaillé au niveau de la reparure.
The details man par excellence even checks to make sure the gold is just the right shade, not too showy.
Oh bah oui, l'aspect rutilant de la dorure tombe complètement. Là, vous avez une tonalité qui est beaucoup plus harmonieuse et qui doit fonctionner donc dans l'ensemble du salon de Mercure.
Finally, the part Laurent loves most. He burnishes the gold with a tool made of smooth agate to bring out its luster.
This is a great part of the job. It's the compensation for all the work you did before.
Above all, Laurent loves his material, just as well as he has altogether 11 stools to gild for this room alone.
L'or, c'est inimitable.
Gold is unique, which is really lucky. The beauty, the purity, the brilliance of gold is unique. All the powders and everything like that, what's called gold paint or gold wax, none of them will ever have the brilliance of gold. Gold is magical.
Back at the Salon de Mercure, Pierre Xavier awaits the verdict on the restoration from the palace's outside expert. His own boss, the palace's director general, will be there to witness the reception.
The work started about 2 years ago. It's been a very long time, and now I'm very pleased to see everything coming together. It's a lot of work and a very important day.
The team is doing its utmost to recreate a room that the Sun King himself would approve of. Standing in for the Sun King, Jacques Garcia, a famous architect and interior designer, who has even bought a Baroque castle of his own. Only with his approval will the curators know that they have been successful and can meet their deadline of opening the room for the last big crowds of the year.
Qu'est-ce que c'est beau là, déjà les deux là, c'est merveilleux. Ah, merveilleux. Ah ouais, oui, oui, ça c'est merveilleux. Ah, c'est merveilleux.
He loves the bedspread.
Ça c'est bien ravivé, hein.
The restoration revived it very well.
Voilà. Je peux te montrer, parce que c'est tellement...
You need to see how beautiful it is. The work is amazing. Gold thread.
C'est quand même...
It's absolutely fantastic, isn't it?
He has an opinion on the upholstery.
C'est un petit peu neuf, ça fait un peu... Là, il y a des brins, il y a des usures, il faut qu'il rattrape des usures avec des brins.
And on the positioning of the chairs.
Ce qui serait sympa, si vous pouviez nous mettre le fauteuil là et le tabouret là, pour qu'on juge de la proportion du siège avec le lit et de l'ensemble. Voilà.
Jacques Garcia is perhaps the only person who can outdo Pierre Xavier. And when it comes to the raising of the chandelier, he's like a man obsessed.
Moi, je rebaisserai encore un petit peu. Ouais, je rebaisserai encore. Un peu plus bas, 5 cm. Elle descend de combien, Pierre-Xavier, la boule? Est-ce que la boule descend plus bas que tout ça?
Oui, plus bas, oui, effectivement, plus bas. Et là, il fait 1m18.
Moi, j'aime beaucoup comme ça.
Alors, on s'arrête pour ça. Donc, il faut maintenant mesurer la hauteur de ce qu'on a.
Exactement. Faut qu'on parte du crochet du talon.
Ça pourrait descendre encore un tout petit peu, 2 cm. Parce que la boule, elle vient... Je vous ai pas salué, vous allez bien? Elle vient combien, la boule, vous diriez? On peut descendre encore 4 cm.
Eventually, Jacques is satisfied. But there is plenty more for him to consider in the room, and in other rooms. His final approval is hard won. The most celebrated stateroom is the Hall of Mirrors, with its 357 mirrors stretching for over 70 meters. The king himself put on grand shows here, lit by up to 20,000 candles. The end-of-season show begins here tomorrow. There will be music and dance, while outdoors, fireworks and a fountain show. There is no danger that a new revolution will again clear the palace in an orgy of destruction. But there is one force that could undo the years of hard work put into recreating the palace in its heyday.
Quentin, hop, avec moi.
When a fireworks show with thousands of guests is on the cards, Stéphane Secoldi leaves nothing to chance. He's chief of Versailles' own internal fire service. He makes sure his new recruit knows his way around the potential trouble spots.
Our job is to make sure the fire extinguishers are in their places, that the wall hydrants are easily accessible, that the emergency exits are free of obstructions, and that there are no leaks. That's the fire department's job.
Stéphane is being modest. If you ranked today's nobility of Versailles, Stéphane might be the top of the top. He and he alone can go anywhere in the palace, and when he issues an order, it's obeyed without question. The fire crew checks the whole palace in teams of 2 every day. From the main halls to a corridor hidden above the Hall of Mirrors.
This wall is from Louis XIII's castle.
Through rickety roof spaces and down to the cellars, beneath the old theater.
These are the traps for the scenery.
And into the silent theater itself. There are over 2,000 rooms here, with some 66 or so open to the public. Only the fire crew gets to see it all. This being Versailles, a fireman has to be something rather special too, as Quentin discovers when he's treated to an impromptu lecture.
This is a very famous painting. David never finished it. He had only just started on the faces. Then the revolution happened and the Empire period began, which made this painting out of date, and so it was never finished.
Stéphane's background is unusual for a fireman, but it does make him perfect for the job.
I have a PhD in history and in art history.
An appreciation of the treasures here is crucial if the worst happens. The priority is always human lives, but these treasures come a close second.
Some works of art, and I don't like saying this, are less important than others. Some are completely unique. In the case of an emergency, we usually work in steps, but at some point a decision will have to be made, and that choice will have to be a rational one.
The high point of the tour, quite literally, is the roof. Though the fire crew has to be careful not to do more harm than good.
Ne pas marcher membrane, parce que ça écrase et ça fend les plombs, c'est du plomb. Et en fait, après, il y a des fuites en dessous.
There's over 100,000 square meters of roof. Almost no one gets to see these magnificent views. Not that the fire team has time to admire them. Despite their best efforts, fire remains a clear and present danger, especially with the coming grand show and its extensive use of pyrotechnics. The local fire department supports the in-house team. If they can get the truck through the gate. Somewhere, a woman is trapped.
Ça fume énormément, vous ne voyez pas à moins d'1 mètre.
This is just an exercise, a drill ordered by Fire Chief Stefan. The firefighters manage to find the assistant, playing a woman overcome by smoke. After the exercise, Stefan's not totally happy. Attention to detail is not just the province of the palace's craftsmen.
Oui, alors c'est une erreur. À mon avis, il aurait fallu en garder un dehors et mettre un seul des liens avec les tiens, pas plus. Et ils étaient en avant. Exactement. Donc mais c'est ça qu'il faut caler. Ça se déroule pas trop mal, hein, c'est assez dynamique.
This isn't just a case of micromanaging. The public will soon be flooding into the restored chambers to enjoy the season's closing spectacle. It's Stefan's job to make sure they're safe. He needs ultimate authority to do it. Bernard Dreux, on the other hand, has very little power at all, and yet he manages to keep the whole palace ticking. Literally. He's the clock master, and he has to care for all the clocks in the palace. Some of the most fragile and precious of Versailles' treasures. There are some 100 of them. If the preparations for the season's final show are running late, then it's nothing to do with him. Bernard can only do this when the palace is closed, so he doesn't disturb the public, and they don't disturb him. But security always needs to know where he is.
Oui, bonjour, c'est l'horloger. Je vais chez la reine. Ouais, pas de problème. Reine et le salon doré aussi. Hein. Je vais juste la remettre à l'heure, je vais l'avancer.
Now, I'm just going to set the time. I need to move it forward a little. I set it ahead a bit, as it usually runs slow.
Tendance à faire un peu de retard.
Louis XV, the great-grandson of Louis XIV, adored astronomy. And so he had this clock built to show the movements of the planets. A precision timepiece, it took 20 years to build. Bernard is as precise as any of the clocks he looks after. He sees himself, a little, as a clock whisperer.
Voilà.
There.
Là, c'est pas bon du tout.
That's not good at all.
Là, j'ai décalé.
The clock is out of sync. The sound is all wrong.
Voilà, ça, c'est l'autre bruit qu'on peut...
That's the other noise you can hear.
C'est quand...
When the clock knocks.
Il a tapé.
There.
Voilà.
It needs balancing. The pendulum is not in the right place.
Pas bien en place.
A couple of delicate touches, and everything is exactly as it should be. The curators have made their final decisions. The artisans have come through. The Salon des Mercures is back on schedule. In the early morning, Laurent, the gilder, makes sure that everything's just right on the 11 replica stools, now placed back in the Sun King's cardroom. All the craftsmen have worked long and hard behind the scenes, and not the slightest imperfection can be allowed to spoil the final effect.
It's a great pleasure to start seeing the public coming into the room, to see the transformation we've made. A great feeling inside. Wonderful.
Formidable.
Soon the doors will open. The behind-the-scenes work is nearly done, and the front-of-house staff is taking over. The palace's security guards check in and receive their assignments. Their job is critical, keeping the public and palace safe. Cédric Ray is supervisor for some of the main staterooms, including the Hall of Mirrors. Cedric is off on his rounds, making sure his sector is ready.
Donc c'est bon, l'évacuation fonctionne aussi.
These were the private corridors that the Sun King himself used to move discreetly between his staterooms. And then, as now, the public doesn't get to see them.
Les fenêtres ouvertes, les volets, les tableaux soient bien en place. Il y a une foule de choses.
There are loads of things. You can't see everything as you go. There are too many things to look out for. It's not easy.
At last, the gates swing wide. The tourists now take over the staterooms, but outside there's plenty of work still to do. The crucial fountain jet is still in the shop, in need of repair. This nozzle is the one last thing standing between the fountain engineers and the perfect water extravaganza.
Bah oui, hein? Ouais, chaud.
The nozzle unit suffered frost damage last winter. It needs an entirely new connection welded in place. The fountain engineers are like everyone at Versailles. The work has to be done properly, or not at all.
The success of welding depends on the cleaning. You really have to clean the support thoroughly.
Though maybe there is such a thing as being too thorough. Finally, even Jean is ready for the welding to begin. There's a real health risk to doing things the old ways. The heavy metal they work with every day is poisonous.
We have to have blood tests to find out the level of lead in the blood. If there's too much, we stop for a year, and it'll go down a bit.
C'est bon, maintenant on regarde à l'œil parce que c'est pas mal, non?
With the jet finished, the race is on to get it working. The water has to shoot straight upwards, or the show might not be able to go ahead. Jean fits the jet back into place.
C'est bon, Jean? Ouais. On va juste à peine ouvrir, Jean. On va juste mettre une petite alim pour voir si c'est bon. Attention à... Est-ce que tu peux monter plus, Adrien? Tu pourras monter plus? Hein? Tu pourras le monter plus haut pour voir? Après? Ouais, s'il te plaît, après.
With a big show on tap, a full-scale test is in order.
Ok Christophe, donc c'est bon pour préouverture sur les terrasses, les combats, la tonne et les arts. Ok Christophe, pour la perspective, c'est parfait pour les terrasses.
The fountains are a key part of the grand spectacle. The jet seems to be holding. Jean's expertise has done the trick. The crowds are now pouring in. The famed Hall of Mirrors is one of the highlights of the palace. Later, music and dance will bring its original elegance back to life, with the opening for the evening's entertainments. But for now, it's simply crowded with visitors. When you get people so close together, things can quickly go wrong, so security's a big issue. Cedric is supervisor here. There's an incident downstairs.
Oui, en fait, il y a un monsieur qui s'est fait voler par des Espagnols apparemment. Et donc là, les Espagnols sont avec moi et donc le mec il veut procéder à une fouille.
D'accord, j'arrive vers toi dès que je peux là. Faut que j'y...
I've got to go.
Pardon, excusez-moi. Pardon. Excuse me, thank you.
By the time he gets to the scene, his men are alone.
Non, en fait c'est un téléphone. Elle pensait que c'était la personne qui était à côté d'elle à ce moment-là.
He thought it was the person that was next to him, so he questioned him, took him by the arm, pulled him aside and said, "Give me my mobile back." And actually, after a couple of minutes, he realized that it was in his wife's bag.
Elle était dans son sac ou dans le sac de sa femme.
Outside, Crowd Security Chief Pierre Olivier is starting his patrol. In a few hours, the daytime tourists must make room for the ticket holders for the big show. There will be thousands of them, and they'll be getting up close to flames, fireworks, electric lights, and water. It's Pierre's task to keep them safe, while also ensuring there are no gate crashers.
Pression supplémentaire, parce qu'on aime bien finir correctement.
A little extra pressure, which we like, to finish the season correctly. So the team has to watch what they're doing and do their jobs properly. We've already sold lots of tickets.
Et puis on a beaucoup de monde.
There's a lot of pressure on us, but we like it. That's why we do this job.
Justement, c'est pour ça qu'on fait ce travail.
The first job is to clear the public from every corner of the park. With 850 hectares, that's not so easy.
Very sorry, the park is closing.
Okay.
Is it possible to go up? Thank you very much. Il y a toujours quelqu'un, il faut toujours...
There's always someone left. We always end up finding someone. Some people may be hiding as well. They may be enjoying small, discreet, and hidden places and be waiting until we've evacuated the park in order to enjoy the evening for free.
Finally, the park is completely empty, and the show people can bring in their volatile gear. They have just 3 hours to set everything up, including CO2 for smoke.
Une canette de coca. Comme une canette de coca. Quand tu la coupes là, elle tombe. Tu la prends pour boire la canette de coca. Elle fait ça. Ah, ouais, j'en reviens.
The last tank is put in place. 1.5 tons of CO2 will be used tonight.
C'est froid. Pour la fumée.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. And that's where the fireworks guys come in. The main areas of the park are going to be filled with fireworks, and that area has been cordoned off for safety. Though there are always some people, public or palace staff, who stray into the danger zone. The fireworks supremo diverts them politely.
Oui, je comprends, d'accord. On peut juste passer en fait.
Vous avez comme obligation de faire le tour comme le public.
D'accord.
Ouais, c'est normal, on est en train d'installer des artifices pour ce soir et vous êtes dans la zone de sécurité.
On ne peut pas se mettre entre vos pattes, hein.
Mais non, mais vous ne me dérangez pas, mais ayez la gentillesse de reprendre les barrières derrière pour refaire le tour.
Bon, on peut reprendre celle-là.
Ça, c'est plus court, c'est mieux pour vous. Vous êtes dans la zone de sécurité, si vous voulez bien.
D'accord.
Merci beaucoup.
Jeff Yelnick is just the latest in a long line of pyro showmen. Fireworks at Versailles go back to the court of Louis XIV. There are going to be hundreds of them going up tonight. But he also has something else in store, something a whole lot more up to date. Flamethrowers. 300 meters of them. Put it all together, and this is some dangerous stuff, with the audience crowding up just a few meters away. While outdoors, the fireworks spectacular is being made ready. Inside the palace, the 18th century is slowly coming back to life. These are actors, dancers, and musicians. And as an overture to the evening, they're going to bring the spectators back into the times of the Sun King. It's got to look absolutely right.
On va poudrer maintenant, hein, on va poudrer.
To the aristocracy of the 18th century, thick white face paint was a sign of high social status, male or female. At least the modern makeup isn't poisonous.
Back then, they used stuff based on mercury and lead. It was dreadful. We have good, healthy stuff. You have to think about allergies. And when you have eyes like this.
Once they're made up, They have to be strapped in for the proper shape. The aim, to make the show as close as possible to something the king himself would have experienced. Pierre Olivier is getting his own team ready. He has to make sure his 60 helpers know what their tasks are. Most of them are students, and they'll be in charge of marshalling thousands of guests.
Il fait beau, il fait chaud. Les chiffres de vente ce soir, ils sont plutôt bons. On est à 7444 billets vendus, plus vos 2500 invités.
With most of the helpers being regulars over the summer, Pierre Olivier can rely on them not to need too much training. An additional reassurance on this final night.
C'est bon pour vous? Alors, je vous souhaite une bonne soirée, un bon courage.
Time to get to work. The performers are nearly ready, but they have to be reminded of the correct way to walk, Baroque style. Even this has to be perfect at Versailles.
Tu commences à te fatiguer, tu tiens, voilà, tu marches comme ça. Tu chutes comme ça, tu descends, voilà. En deux possibilités, soit comme ça, comme un cornet de frites à l'envers. Parfait. Les articulations. Voilà, tu peux marcher, vas-y, marche. Très bien.
The crowds at the barriers are growing thick. Their tickets are not exactly cheap. And with a tradition for this kind of show stretching back 400 years, they have high expectations of what they're going to see.
We came about 20 years ago and we thought, why not come again?
At last, they can come in.
We're expecting madness, bubbles, color, scents, joy, and love.
Finally, the evening's entertainments begin. While the sun goes down, the atmosphere of the 18th century is recreated in the Hall of Mirrors. Outside, though, Pierre Olivier circulates, making sure crowd safety is okay. And the fire team holds its last briefing.
Vous avez tous vos fonctions? C'est bon?
The vehicles spread out through the park. Nothing must spoil the fun when the fireworks and fountains start. Pierre's security crew allows the crowds to enter the gardens, and they are already magically lit. But with almost 10,000 spectators, they can't afford any bottlenecks.
Bonsoir, messieurs, dames. Continuez à avancer, il y a du monde derrière vous, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Bonsoir, messieurs, dames. Je vous demande de bien vouloir continuer à descendre. En fait, c'est une voie de sécurité pour que ça soit fluide. Si vous voulez prendre des photos, il faut rester sur la voie du milieu. Merci bien.
La dernière petite boucle, on va l'arrêter dès qu'il y a un petit blanc, on fait un fade, il y aura 2 minutes de blanc et après on attaque pour nous.
Parfait, on est à combien du tir exactement s'il te plaît?
6 minutes du tir, donc 5 minutes du décompte, 6 minutes du tir.
Ok, parfait, merci beaucoup, à tout à l'heure, concentration.
L'article est plus parce que ça brille et ça change de couleur.